This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit xero.com/accounting insiders to learn more. Hello, it is August the 22nd. My name is Gary Dehart. I am the host of the Accounting Insiders podcast and the publisher of Insightful Accountant. My guest today is Michelle LeBlanc. Michelle, welcome. And so Michelle is one of our trainers in our Be Insightful premium content program. And Michelle's background is human resources. Michelle works with I don't know, actually, I'm going to ask this as a question as I say it, but so Michelle works with accounting firms as an outsourced HR professional. Do you also work outside of accounting firms with
I do.
other types of businesses? Okay.
Yes, many different industries along the way, specifically focusing on accounting and finance professionals, both supporting their firms directly as well as sub supporting their clients as well in an HR perspective.
Gotcha. And HR can be a very sticky spot, right, for
Very.
companies. And I think probably more so for smaller firms, smaller companies, because we don't have the resources typically to have a person on staff or to have somebody who's really following and ensuring that we are checking all the boxes that the federal, local, state governments want us to
Mhm.
check. And there's lots of boxes, right? That
Lots.
and if you don't
Yes.
check them, you can get in legal trouble, you can get in financial trouble, or a combination of the two, and then spirals from there. So before we dive in, I do want to. So this is really a follow up to a webinar you hosted for us yesterday, and that was on leveraging ChatGPT and or other types of tools like that in human resources. So if you wouldn't mind just giving just a little bit of a overview of what you talked on. It was an hour, so we're gonna get you to condense that down into like 3 minutes. But an
Oh, yeah.
overview of how would you go about leveraging ChatGPT type of resource from an HR perspective.
Sure. It was a fun topic to dive into just because AI is everywhere. We see it all the time, no matter what program you open up, no matter what newscast you put on, you're going to hear something about AI. ChatGPT happens to be probably the most kind of well known from a brand perspective, but they all kind of do the same thing and function very similarly. And the reason that I wanted to talk about it with this audience in particular is because, you hit the nail on the head. Most small businesses, we've got solopreneurs, entrepreneurs just starting out. Maybe you're at kind of a segue in your business where you're starting to grow, but you don't really have the means to justify a full-time HR staff, let alone, feeling like you need to outsource something. So that's really what we do. And that's how my business was born. And ChatGPT in particular is a tool that small businesses and individuals can use and leverage so much of the tasks that it will do in your own space. And so what I love about it is that you can kind of train it to an extent to be a personal assistant of sorts is really the best analogy that I can use and that I used in our webinar yesterday kind of over and over. You can train ChatGPT to do very, normal tasks such as anything from writing emails to policy to writing you some job descriptions. If you're looking for anything like offer letters or even a termination letter, things like that are very easily generated by the ChatGPT platform. And I love that and want to share that with small businesses because, time is money and you are only one person or you're only a very small team most of the time. And
Right.
you're not necessarily justifying, oh, I need to call someone and hire this other company to do my HR support. And how do I do an offer letter? And versus going out on the internet and just downloading something random which is fine that someone put together, at some point. Being able to use a tool like ChatGPT, it pulls tons of information from both inputs that customers have already put in there, but also pulls information that it's kind of sourced from all over the web. So you're really getting kind of the best of both worlds. You're getting best practices that are out there and available to the public. You're also getting this kind of AI robot brilliance that is, using that information and kind of regurgitating it in a way that you're needing it specifically to tailored to what you're doing.
Yeah,
So,
and
oh,
and
yeah,
I was just gonna say, and commenting on that, one thing that I think Christine Gervais, who I think that's how we got
yes,
connected actually.
correct.
One thing that she touched on in one of her recent webinars was voice. I think it was her actually. You know what? It may not have been. It may have been Janelle Sikora, but either way, um, she touched on voice, and I until I'd
Mm,
heard that, I didn't understand that you had that ability to kind of change the voice of what AI was generating for you. And when I say voice, I'm not talking about the audible voice. It's how it feels or how it reads, how it seems, or how it comes across as you read it. And before this, I was actually had an article posted on one site that I was, pulled off, put it on our other site, and had AI reword it.
mhm,
And one of the boxes, and this is within HubSpot, and one of the boxes, it says, do you want to change the voice, or do you want it this type of voice or that type
uh,
of voice? Um, which is it's an amazing tool. With that said, you can't just let it run free.
no.
You definitely have to follow up on it, right? Because even that, I mean, I read it, I'm like, nope, 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 had to change, five or six things in it, as good as it
You
is.
you do for sure, and that was something that we touched on yesterday as well. And when you talk about training a system, really it's just, pardon me, really it's just helping it learn what your voice is. And you're right, it's not what accent it's going to come out as when it,
Right.
gives you that information. But you'll as you begin to use the tools more, you will see that it's kind of that tone, right? That cadence of, okay, are we taking a very casual, informal approach to my language that I'm using? What I personally do is when I'm prompting whatever it is, hey, rewrite me this blog article, but I'll say something to the effect of, I am an accounting consultant. I need you to rewrite this article from my point of view towards an audience of, finance professionals. I want it to be professional but approachable. I want it to be friendly but not casual, if you will. So
Hmm.
you can give very, very specific prompts and it kind of becomes a process. So I keep going back to the analogy that I use it as my assistant, but truly it is because any new employee you onboard, you're going to have to go through a training exercise where they get to know your business, they get to know how you work, they get to know kind of your tones, your feels, all of that good stuff. And it's interestingly very, very similar of a process when you're using tools like AI. So you're absolutely right. And something we touched on a lot was you need to be very mindful that you're not just trusting this blindly and okay, it generated me an email to my boss and I'm going to go send that off somewhere.
Right.
To your point, they may
Yeah.
react very quickly as I have in many cases and said, "Oh, I'm glad ChatGPT wrote your email for you."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at the agenda from yesterday. That's why I keep looking up here.
Yeah.
And number seven, I don't recall you getting to number seven specifically because in on number seven it was AI tools, Claude, and more. Did you speak specifically on Claude?
We we didn't go into a lot of
Okay.
detail.
All right.
What I was sharing was there are, and Gary, you may be familiar as well. There are a couple of different I say popular platforms out there, ChatGPT, I would say, is kind of the name everybody knows, right?
Yep.
There are a couple other platforms by different companies. One of them is called Claude, Claude. And a lot of people, I kind of look at it as like, hey, are you a Chrome user, or are you a Bing user or a Yahoo user? Like,
Right.
everybody kind of has their own niche and preference for things, right? My personal opinion is, if you like Chat GPT, you might try Claude. They're both very similar. You can get free accounts to start out with both. As everything in this world is today, there's always the option to, get
Right.
the premium subscriptions. Um, the feedback I have personally experienced, but that others have also shared with me, is kind of the general consensus is Claude tends to be more humanistic in their
Okay.
responses. Um, it the truth in that, I don't necessarily know. I do like Claude. I've used both. And then there's a couple others. Google has their own now. And then, outside of the kind of open text AI sources, I'm sure all of you mentioned HubSpot. Just about every platform you log into these days has some sort of AI tech that's now being integrated in it for sure.
Right. Yeah, and I think Janelle, when she went over some of this, I think she said similar to what you said about Claude being it has a little bit, maybe the voice can be a little bit
Yep.
more, like you said, a little more human. So that's
Yes,
interesting.
and my recommendation is always, like, especially with any tool that I recommend for folks, whether that's AI or something completely different, I love free trials of all the things. Take advantage of it. Go play around. When it comes to Chat GPT and all of the things that you can do within it, like, it really is kind of you figure out what you're doing, you play around, you use and then you learn all sorts of different things that it's going to do along the way. And that's where I think really the ROI comes in, is like, once you figure out how to use it and leverage it in your own business, it
Yeah.
is supposed to be a huge time saver, right? So if you can
Yeah.
utilize something that's not, you're not going to have to go back and, hey, I need you to sound more like me, hey, I need you to sound a little softer, hey, I need, if you can get it to that point a lot quicker, then again, time's money and efficiency is what
Exactly.
we're here for.
Yep, yep. All right, so let's pivot just a little bit. I'm gonna actually pivot. I'm gonna go all the way back to the opening, and where I you know, touched on there's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of gotchas in HR. So I'm a small firm. I'm not really, but let's just say I'm a small firm, and I don't have a human resources
Mhm.
resource. What would you say are the top two or three, maybe that's 50, but probably want to keep it, narrow that down a little bit, things that I must be on top of for my business if I have
Sure.
employees?
Yeah. I have approached this question a lot over the years, and my number one recommendation is always get your onboarding process locked down. And because I mean, stats out there are insane as far as, it's over 50% of new employees that feel like they have an insufficient onboarding process will leave a company within the first 90 days to 6 months. I mean,
Oh, wow.
it is astronomical. And when I say onboarding, traditionally, many people will look at onboarding as, oh, well, we do an orientation, right? Like, we have a day where we go over everything and then they're good to go, right? What I mean by onboarding is an entire experience. So, years ago, I was hired into a role with a global Fortune 500 company that felt it was so important to focus on onboarding that they created a whole department just for us to be able to lock this down. If that doesn't
Wow.
tell you how critical, the experience is, I'm not sure what does. And what I mean by that is, you need to set up your employees for success. What does that look like? So from the moment that you are speaking to them from an interview standpoint, the moment they accept an offer from you, what do you have in place that makes that experience from that point on to the point that they get in their seat great? Um, you know, highly communicative, letting them know what their expectations are. Do they have all the tech they need? Do they have the login stuff they need? Do they know where to find things? All of those components go into a proper onboarding program. And then after day one, what does that look like? So do we get them all set up and then we're like, all right, good luck, have at it? Or do they have the resources they need? Do they know who to go to if they need help? Do they know? And when you're talking remote workforce as well, that adds in a whole other layer of complicated, things that we need to be aware of as far as tech and hours of operations and availability and response time. So when you think of, I'm starting a brand new job, I have no idea what the expectation. I know how to do my job, but I don't know how to get to all the things and do all the stuff. The more information we can provide our employees in a very structured manner, bite-sized pieces, time it correctly, set yourself up for success from the beginning, because if you do it right from straight out of the gate, you're not needing to call. Not that I don't want you to call me, I'd love for you to, but you're not needing to call someone like me in a crisis because you had an employee quit, you don't have all the paperwork in place, you don't know and then you don't know why they quit, and it's going to
Right.
happen again and again and again. So that's a very like super quick version of onboarding in a nutshell. It is probably the most important thing that a company can do well if you are hiring employees.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because we've gone through that very recently in
Mhm.
onboarding someone in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And so it's obviously remote. And we, I did not do a very good job of onboarding. And as you're talking, what I've kind of recognized, I recognized it then, but it really, as you're
Mhm.
talking, made a lot more sense. It also cost me 3 times as much of my time
Yep.
for us not to be prepared and for us not to have a good plan for him when he came on board. Like you said, here's your logins, here's all the logins, here's your access, um,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. So I think as a small business person, whether you're a firm owner or what have you, it's it's an investment on the front end that
Yep.
pays dividends on the back end because you're not getting 18 Teams chats about the same thing over and over, right? So that's number
Absolutely.
one. What would you say number
Yep.
two? What's number two?
Oh man.
I
You
kind of
know,
put you on the spot. We didn't talk about this
No,
before,
that's
so
okay. That's okay. Speaking to this audience in particular, this may not be as critical of an issue, but once you start having any sort of employees or even contractors, right? Any person that you have to pay for their work and their services, you need to have proper payroll systems in place. And you need to have that before you pay anyone. And I know, hopefully, the audience here is nodding their heads, going, absolutely,
right.
yes, you have to do that. I have spent my entire career in HR, and I have said it from the first day that I ever had a job in HR. If we do nothing else right, if we screw up everything else from an HR standpoint, we have to pay our employees what they are owed, and we have to do it in a timely manner, and we have to be compliant about it. The worst, in my personal opinion, one of, if not the worst things an employer can do is not pay an employee. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Gary, like, I don't want to be in trouble with the IRS, and I
Yep.
certainly don't want to be in trouble with the Department of Labor. Those are
They're
two
probably
that I'm like,
worse, right?
nope.
Yeah.
And
DOL might be worse than the IRS, I would imagine.
they
Yeah.
are terrifying.
Yeah.
And you do not, and they don't play around, and they shouldn't, right? Like, at the
Right.
end of the day, if we've got our stuff together and we're doing it right, then we don't have a problem with them. So I would say making sure that your processes are in place, whether you're using, some sort of HRIS payroll system of some sort, which highly recommend, because as y'all know, you can get them. I know you work with Zero, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of others out there. Um, so get it in place. Again, small investment for the long term of things, to make sure that it's right. And then a lot of these payroll systems, especially because payroll is its own beast and not everyone in finance does payroll, not everyone in HR
Hmm.
does payroll. A lot of these systems will set it up for you. Again, it's really about setting that foundation so you aren't having fires to put out later. And you're right, it's a time investment. It's typically a monetary investment of some sort,
Yeah.
but it pays dividends in the long run and saves you so much stress and time and money to do it right out of the gate. So, yeah, I would definitely say getting your payroll straight once you start paying employees or contractors.
Okay, great. So I'm going to pivot us over just so I can be respectful of your time.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to have you share a little bit about your business and how you work in the accounting space, um, as both as a consultant to accountants, but
Hmm.
also as a consultant for accountants might be the best way to
Yeah,
word that. So what does that look like? How do you work in
sure.
this space?
So I have been in this consulting space for a couple of years, since about 2019, branching out into supporting smaller businesses in particular. And what I do is work specifically with small firms. So I understand very intricately, the struggles, the differentiations between working with a global Fortune 500 company versus working with Bob Smith, who just opened his CPA firm, with his two employees. So I work with accounting firms. So some of the accounting firms that I am partnered with, I work as their internal HR. So on, usually it's kind of a contract partnership that they need something from me throughout the month. They can send their employees to me just like any sort of HR department would be. I'm just outsourced and they're not
Yeah,
paying for somebody to sit on site with them full time. The benefit of that and what I enjoy about it is I do have opportunity to get to know the teams. I get to be able to function within the teams. I kind of get it updated. So it's not just some random person you get when you speak with us about any sort of HR issues. I also partner with those firms at times, a couple of them. They may just be offering financial services, but they have clients that come to them and they have HR issues. Hey, I need to terminate this person. Hey, I'm having a problem with XYZ. Oh, well, hey, we have someone that we can refer you to. And then I kind of work with those clients on a referral basis. Again, outsourced HR support. I work with clients on a whole bunch of different levels, just that works for them and based on their needs. And just knowing and being very familiar with the fact that most companies the size that I work with don't need a full-time dedicated HR staff, but we saw a gap there,
right.
and that's what we're trying to fill. So yeah, kind of in both capacities, specifically with the financial industry, and then, like I said earlier, definitely industries across the board are also who we support.
Right. Yeah, and I think with I haven't heard it written or haven't seen it written or heard it spoken lately. All the focus has been on, client accounting services, this and advisory, blah blah blah. But going back to who the CPA, even bookkeepers, right? Who the accounting professionals are to small businesses. Going back to it's an old
Yep.
term, they're the trusted advisor. And
Yeah.
if you take that trusted advisor moniker, then add in a true small business advisor role for that
Mhm.
firm, they need to be offering services like yours.
Yep.
If you're if I'm your accounting pro and you have a question, I want you to call me
Yep.
because what my impact, where I can impact your business has ripple effects, right? I mean, it's not just about doing your tax return at the end of the year or your
No.
books at the end of the month. If I can get deep into your business and if I can get across your business and do a good job,
Yep.
it makes you a sticky, yeah, it makes you a sticky customer. It makes you a customer for life.
Yep. Yep.
And put me on speed dial number one, and we'll get your solutions or your questions answered for you. So I think these types of services that you're offering are a gap that's in the market that needs to be filled because accounting firms, again, if you're a true advisor, doesn't stop at the tax return, doesn't stop at financial planning
Hmm.
in my mind. Doesn't have to. Let me say that. It doesn't have to stop there. It can go much broader. So with that, how do people connect with you? And then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. My contact information should be out there on Insightful Accountant, but Evolved HRX is the name of my firm. It is www.evolvedhrx.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and I would love to connect. I do offer, our team offers a free, no strings attached 30-minute consultation for anybody that comes through the Insightful Accountant platform to us, and would love the opportunity to learn more about your business and see if it might be a good fit where we could help.
Perfect. Michelle, thank you so much. Thanks for your time yesterday. Thanks for your time today. And then I am sure that we will talk very soon.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks a
Appreciate
lot.
it.
Alrighty. Bye bye.